All right, my name's Nick Ham. I'm the founder and CEO of 10K Advisors. I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem about 14 years now. Worked for a number of consulting companies, large and small. And I'm about 6 years into my own personal entrepreneurial journey, which we'll talk just a tiny bit about as part of this presentation today. And joining me today is Mike Martin, and I'll let Mike introduce himself.
Hey everybody, sorry about that. Mike Martin here. I am Chief Customer Officer at 10K Advisors. I own all of our customer relationships, both for direct customers as well as other Salesforce partners that we work with. I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem about 12 years. I actually got my start as a Salesforce admin back in 2008. Spent a couple years doing that before jumping into the consulting world, actually in 2010 with Nick in a past life, and spent about 8.5 years at a global consulting company, Aperio, in a number of different roles, from business analyst, managing teams, building talent, as well as in a sales capacity. So excited to hear a little bit more about our journeys. I personally started my independent journey in joining 10K about 1.5 years ago.
Great, thank you very much, Mike. And with that, just wanted to take a second to kind of explain who is 10K and why are we presenting something about entrepreneurship in the Salesforce ecosystem. 10K is a Salesforce consultancy, this again is part of my own personal entrepreneurial journey. Was something that I created based on a need that I saw in the ecosystem and a trend that I saw in the ecosystem, and something that I'll encourage you all to think about too as you think about your journey. So what we do at 10K is we work exclusively with independent consultants and small consulting companies who I believe are the source of the best talent in the ecosystem, and provide that expertise on demand to the customers who need it. We work with a ton of entrepreneurs, obviously, through the community of experts that we work with. We see some successful practices amongst those independents. We see some that help us learn to do things better. And so, we wanted to provide a lot of our own personal experiences as well as the experiences that we've seen with our experts in our community to help other people who are thinking about the journey to entrepreneurship. So today what we're going to talk about are really some practical tips for considering whether or not you want to take the leap into being an entrepreneur. And if so, what are some of the practical steps that you should take? So the first thing when considering if you want to become an entrepreneur is to really assess, is being an entrepreneur the right thing for you, and is now the right time? A little bit of an anecdote about when I started my entrepreneurial journey. I did think about, why am I going to do this? And my why was really, I saw a problem and I thought that I had a good solution on how we could solve that problem. The problem was, it was really hard for Salesforce customers to find great talent. It still is. The other part of that was a lot of great consultants were going independent and becoming independent contractors, and kind of creating a very diverse network of talent that was not concentrated or accessible to those customers. So that was kind of the why around 10K. But really, it wasn't until a few years into my journey that I read a book called Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And I would encourage everyone to take a look at that book if you have a chance. But there's really a deeper why that is important to answer about being an entrepreneur. And that has to be more than, I'm doing it to make a lot of money, I'm doing it to have more flexibility. There has to be something deeper. And the importance of that is because there are going to be times when there's not money. There are going to be times when there's not flexibility. There are going to be times when you're not going to be able to check those boxes, and you have to have something else that's going to keep you going. And so I strongly encourage you to find your own why. And also think about what's going to make you different than everybody else in the ecosystem. What's your differentiator? Especially in business and entrepreneurship, differentiation is extremely important to be noticed and to be recognized by customers. I would encourage you to think about what problems are you going to solve, right? So what is the problem statement that you have, and why are you special, and why are you going to be able to solve that problem better than anybody else? And I would also encourage you, whether your plans are to become an independent contractor and you maybe do a little bit of contract work, or your plan is to build a huge company, to think about building your own personal mission statement, right? Why are you embarking on this journey? And think about that, iterate on it. It's sometimes those things can take, you can sit there and rack your brain for hours and not come up with something, right? But just write something down and then revisit it tomorrow, revisit it the next day, right? But really, really think deeply and introspectively about why you want to start on this journey before you take any of the steps that we're going to talk about. So once you've thought about why you want to do this, the other thing that I would encourage you to think about is, when you work for a company, you've got lots of roles, right? You have the CEO, CFO, COO. You've got, lots of stratified teams that are responsible for different areas of the business. But now that you're going to be an entrepreneur and start your journey, you get to be in charge of all that, right? Which can be exciting. It can be a good thing. It can also be pretty daunting as well. What you really have to think about is, when you become an independent consultant or an entrepreneur, maybe 50 to 75% of your time is actually spent doing the work that you maybe thought all your time was going to be spent doing, right? Working with customers, configuring orgs, doing releases, providing, a strategic consulting to your clients. The rest of that is planning, collections and invoices, setting up systems that you need to run your business, going out and selling new business, reviewing contracts, creating contracts, right? There's lots of other things that are involved in planning for your business. And so one of the things to really think about, especially as you're thinking about the financial plan for your business in the beginning and maybe writing an initial business plan, is a lot of people might think, well, I've got 40 hours a week that I can bill to my customers. I bill it at X rate times 40. That's how much money I'm going to make. In reality, you have to include some time, at least 25% for overhead of other additional tasks that you're going to spend your time on that are not billable time. And those come right off the top line, right? Unless you want to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week, which some people do, and that's fine. But take that into account in your business plan, and make sure that you're really thinking through that. And that kind of really goes into the next big thing to think about, which is be honest about your weaknesses, right? So one of the really common interview questions are, what are your biggest strengths? What are your biggest weaknesses, right? And the biggest weakness question is hard for a lot of people. I know that's kind of become a little bit cliche now, and people, if you've been trained on interviews, you think about that up front probably. But this is a time, again, for you to be really introspective and really honest with yourself and really self-aware, which those are also qualities that are going to help you be a great entrepreneur and a great consultant to your client. But be really self-aware around what you're good at and what you enjoy doing, and what you're maybe not so good at. So, for example, if you've never reviewed a statement of work and don't understand indemnification clauses, it's probably best to leave that part of your business to an attorney, right? If you have not filed taxes as an entrepreneur or as a business entity, or you've not reviewed all the tax law in the different states where you do business, probably best to get a CPA who's done that, right? So be very honest, especially in the positions that we talked about before, about where you think you are good, and where you think you can add a lot of value to the business, and where you maybe not so good, or maybe where you don't have that experience. And that's going to really help you understand, okay, what are the gaps that I need to fill? Where do I need to go get advisors? And those are some things that we'll talk about as we go. So once you've, these first three steps are just kind of let's get ready and really be honest with ourselves and think about, is this right for us? And if you've kind of made it through this phase of the thinking of becoming an entrepreneur and you're ready to actually do it, then Mike will kind of walk us through the first couple steps to making the transition.
Perfect. Oh boy. There we go. Sorry about that. So once you've found your why, kind of thought through some of the things that Nick just discussed, what's next? How do you start to actually make that transition? And recommend and the approach that I took and many other entrepreneurs take is to take baby steps to get there. Start small. When I started to think about the potential for being an entrepreneur and going out on my own, I found mentors, folks that I trusted that I could talk to, run the scenario by, and get advice from folks that had done it in the past, folks like Nick and other folks in our network that knew what this world was like. And make sure you're talking to folks before you actually make that step. So start small, find those mentors. We'll talk about some advisors, being ethical, and then making it official. So finding the right advisors is incredibly important. We already talked about identifying your strengths and weaknesses. Around those things that you may not be the best at, you probably should have a support system in place. So personally, I made the decision about a year and a half ago to go out on my own. I had always done my own taxes. I had always kind of managed my own finances. I knew as I looked to starting a business entity that I needed some help and support. So I went to my network, my financial advisor, and said, hey, I need some help finding a CPA. So was able to interview, meet a couple of folks, and found somebody that was a good fit, that was an independent advisor himself, had gone through the process and could make appropriate recommendations around, do I need an LLC or do I need an S Corp? What type of tax implications are there based on kind of what my proposed and expected income was going to be, helping me with estimated taxes and understanding what needs to be put back for those as those tax bills come up. So it's important to find those advisors that you trust, understand what your weaknesses are, and kind of fill some of those gaps. Some of the other advisors that are incredibly important are insurance brokers. If you've never read an SOW or master services agreement from a customer, many of those have specific insurance requirements that are specific to errors and emissions or commercial coverage that typically your personal or homeowner's insurance is not going to cover. So it's important to have those types of things in place, and a broker or someone that can help you get the right insurance and have the appropriate coverage, so you're not at risk. Again, having somebody like an attorney, I'm one of those that doesn't understand the indemnification clause. So I went out and found a couple of folks that I trusted to review my contracts. Have somebody help put that together, and have an attorney that you trust that can review those, just to protect both yourself and your business. As we're coming into a time of small business loans, and just in general, having a banker that you trust is incredibly important as well. Somebody that you can talk about doing a loan, or what does this loan mean for me, or how do I support my business in rough times, those types of things. So having a banker, and I alluded to this already, but it's important to have a mentor as well. I personally have, they were coffee meetings, have turned to hangouts and Zoom meetings with folks on a regular basis, just to check in, see how things are going, run things by, just so you're not going it alone. So you have that support structure. That's incredibly important. And it's important to remember and continue to remember what those weaknesses are, and be vulnerable as a part of that process, and open up to those things that you may not be sure about, and ask for help or support. Another thing that's important to think about, be ethical as you start to go independent. Many of us have found that our great first customers are folks that we've worked with in the past, or even the company that you're working for today, being able to contract back for some support or specific needs on projects that you're working on, or you have a lot of domain knowledge for that organization. But as you approach that, be sure to be ethical and don't rip off your employer. Again, these folks can be good long-term customers for you, even if you're not working there in a full-time capacity. Don't take intellectual property that you aren't entitled to. You may have created it as a part of an employment agreement or a relationship with a previous customer or previous employer. Make sure you understand who owns that intellectual property, and don't take anything with you that doesn't belong to you. And most importantly, don't burn any bridges. Again, these folks can be your referrals, references. Actually, a couple of the customers that I've worked with in the last year and a half have come from long-running relationships that I've had because of that trust that I was able to build with them earlier in my career. So being able to bring those folks along in an ethical fashion is incredibly important.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Mike. And I agree. A lot of times, and this was really true for me as well, your previous employers can be some of your best first customers. Don't burn that bridge. It's a really important tip. So once you've kind of gone through the assessment process, you have your mentors, and you have a lot of your support system in place, it's very important, in my opinion, to make it official by creating an actual business entity. So a lot of folks will go out and start contracting as an individual. And not that there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but I think making it official does a few things. Number one, from a pure non-business standpoint, it cements it in your mind that this is a business and this is an official entity and this is your job and this is your focus versus it's just kind of something that I'm trying out, right? So if you want to try things out, sure, go work a few hours for somebody on a 1099 basis and maybe see if it's right for you. But really, if you've gone through these steps that we've talked about, you've invested a lot of time in this already, and you've invested a lot of effort into it. Potentially, you've invested a few dollars into it. Starting a business entity does not cost a lot of money compared to how it can protect you in the future. And honestly, if you're working with some larger customers, they're going to require this, right? A lot of larger customers do not prefer to work with independent contractors who are working under their own social security number, for example. They want a business entity that has insurance and that has more formality. This also sends a signal to these customers that this is something that you are going to pursue long term, and it's not something that you're just kind of trying out. So that you're not going to decide, once you start working with this customer in 3 months, hey, this isn't right for me, I'm going to actually go do something else, right? So that's very important from that perspective. It's also very important from a tax and financial perspective, which your advisors can advise you which business entity type is right for you, whether it's an LLC or an S Corp or some other type of business entity. They can walk you through those decision-making process around how you're going to pay yourself. Are you going to have employees? And help you decide the right structure. But it also helps you go start a new bank account that's a business-specific bank account. And keep your finances separate from your own personal finances. Intertangling your business and personal finances is going to create most likely a nightmare for you at some point, if not sooner, definitely later. So go out, if you've made this decision, create a business entity, make it official, doesn't cost that much money. It's something that you can keep even if you don't continue to work on it. You just really have to file an annual report in most states that doesn't cost any money. Maybe it costs you, $75 or $100 to renew it based on which state you're in. Most states are free. So I highly, highly encourage people to actually go out and create a business entity if this is something that you decide to pursue long term. So the next part is have contingency plans. So yes, we've said, hey, be super invested in this, like do your research, make sure that this is the right thing for you. But, you always also have to plan for things to go wrong. And this is like, good advice for life in general, but especially when you're a business owner, especially if you might have employees, right? Having contingency plans is super, super important. So even as you're starting your business and you're building your business plan, a lot of times you might build one plan and then you might build a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, and on down, right? What's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? But when I talk about contingency plans in this situation, it really has to do a lot with finances first. And then what do you do when things go wrong, right? Which means, I'm going out and I'm saying, hey, I think I can go find all these independent contractors who would love to work with me. I can find all these customers who would love to work with me, and they're just going to connect and they're all going to be happy and it's going to be great. And that might be going well for a while, right? But you might have customers who decide they don't want to pay you, which definitely happens. You might have customers who say, hey, I had to lay off most of my staff and we're stopping all of our projects. That's a very common thing that could be happening in this time right now. And actually, the situation that we're in right now with coronavirus is a perfect example of the reasons to have a contingency plan. So, the number one thing that I typically recommend from a contingency standpoint, at least from a financial standpoint, is have financial reserves, right? Do not go into starting a business as a way to get out of a financial bind. You really want to be on good financial footing as you go into your business. So that should be step one before, that should really be like step zero, right before all of this that we're talking about. Make sure that you're on good financial footing. And as you start your business, make sure that you are putting money in reserve. I typically recommend kind of 3 to 6 months of expenses. And if your expense is just yourself, then 3 to 6 months of your salary or what you want to pay yourself or what the minimum you could pay yourself. Put that away. Put that somewhere where you can't touch it. It's not part of the business. And that's going to help you weather the storm when there are those ups and downs. When a customer was supposed to pay you net 30, but they ended up paying you net 60, right? That's a whole month that you didn't get any of that money. And if you're working with one customer, that's all of your income, right? So first part of contingency is financial contingency, right? Make sure that you have kind of a safety net as you start, especially in the beginning of the entrepreneurial journey. It's very, very important. Number two is make sure that you're thinking about, what if things don't go the way that I expect them to go? Because 90% of the time they won't go the way you expect them to go. They might go directionally the way you expect, but maybe it's going to take you a little bit different path to get there. This is where it's important to be flexible and to understand is in the beginning, if I outlined all my strengths and what I can bring to the market, well, if that first strength is not as applicable anymore, maybe I can look at that second strength, right? Maybe I can go to that third strength. And those are ways that I can adapt and adjust to the realities of what I'm being presented with as an entrepreneur or as an independent consultant. And your third contingency might be, and this is a fortunate type of contingency for us in the Salesforce ecosystem to have, is I have to go get a full-time job, right? And that's not a bad contingency plan, right? Ultimately, you have to feed your family, you have to pay your mortgage, you have to do those things, right? So know when to say when, right? Don't get yourself into a worse situation trying to save something that may not be worth saving at the time, right? And sometimes it's okay just to call it a day and say, look, I tried. This is what it is. I'm just going to go get a job and maybe I'll try it again later. Or maybe I decided, hey, I realize this isn't for me and this is not what I want to do, right? So there's no shame in shutting something down or going and getting a job. At least you tried, right? But it is important to have that as one of your contingency plans and know when to enact each contingency plan within your entrepreneurial journey. So this goes a little bit with the last one, right? You can actually have more contingency plans the more that you are learning and the more that you are growing personally, right? So if you are a very good sales and service cloud expert today, and that's really been your bread and butter, I would encourage you, for example, to maybe go look at CPQ or look at MuleSoft or look at one of these other growth areas. And this is part of being kind of the CEO of your business is you can't always be heads down delivering what you're good at. You also have to be thinking about, well, what's next? Because at some point, sales and service cloud may not be as hot as the next thing. And then when Salesforce goes and acquires these next 3 companies and creates these whole sub ecosystems around them, how are you going to take advantage of that opportunity? And do some of those maybe play to your strengths better than others, right? So definitely be focusing on how you can grow as an individual consultant, as somebody who adds value to the customers that you work with. But then also think about how can I grow as an entrepreneur, as a person, as somebody who will potentially be hiring employees and leading these employees on their own journeys, right? So read, have mentors, go with Trailhead and learn new skills. But this has to be part of that 25% that I talked about that is not ingrained in the day-to-day work that you're doing for your customers. When you work for a company and you have a boss that says, hey, these are your targets for this year, this is what I want you to accomplish, it's a little bit easier, right? It's really structured and laid out for you. Kind of, this is my plan, this is what I have to do. But now that you're the boss and the doer, you're responsible for doing both of those yourself. And a lot of people get stuck into a rut where they get very comfortable. They're like, hey, I'm bringing in lots of money. I'm doing really well. I've got some great clients, and I don't really need to go do anything else. This is working out really well. Well, again, when something crazy happens that you didn't expect, you're not going to have a contingency plan for that. So growth and learning will never be something that is going to hurt your business, right? Those are only going to be things that will make you as a person better, make you more valuable to your clients, and more valuable to your future clients too. So certainly think about how you build this into your plan for growing as an individual and growing as a business owner. Back to you, Mike.
So an important part of that growth is expanding your network and understanding what your reach can be. So you might have started an LLC or an S corp. You've got your logo. Who's going to know about that? It's important that folks know what you're up to and what your skill sets are. And there's a ton of great opportunities in the Salesforce ecosystem to support that. There's things like community groups out there. Obviously, many of those are virtual these days, but you have opportunities to connect with other folks as a part of those groups, both on the Trailblazer community at the virtual meetings, and then when we get to in-person again. The Dreamin' events, like where we presented this presentation in the past, take advantage of those groups and the opportunity to network with large groups of folks that have Salesforce needs. Take advantage of social, Twitter, LinkedIn, and even Facebook to some extent. Let people know what you're up to. People are excited to celebrate that you've started something. They also may have recommendations, or as you're building that broad reach, there may be things that they've heard that you could support, either in their networks or in their organizations themselves. And partners are a good source of business. Reach out to your existing network, folks that you've worked with in the past, both from a coworker perspective, but also any partners that you've hired. Actually, about half of our business comes from other Salesforce partners. That's a great source as well. And think about building your personal brand as well. What does that mean? What does it mean to be Mike Martin, or what does it mean to be 10K Advisors? Take advantage of things like those events to sponsor. One of the great examples I gave here was Phil Southern, Clicks to Code, actually sponsored a part of Witness Success last year. It was a pretty light investment on his part, but he got his name in front of a lot of folks. So those things are awesome opportunities to share and build your personal brand. And even if you aren't going independent, treat your customers like they could be. People remember those positive experiences that you've had. And with that, thank you for your attention and for your attendance. We'd love to open it up for questions. Feel free to drop a question in the Q&A box there in the Zoom webinar, or feel free to raise your hand and we can unmute you and you can ask your question that way as well.
And the one thing I will say as you are formulating your questions out there is I know that we've gone through a lot of stuff here today, and it's a lot to think about. Hopefully you've been furiously jotting down notes on a piece of paper in a Google Doc or something like that. But one of the things that we're working on is actually a formal checklist for all the things that we talked about today that you can use as a guide to go through and kind of check the boxes on your own, or write out your own strengths and weaknesses, things like that. And so everyone that registered for the webinar, will send you a link to that once that is up on our website.
All right. I haven't seen any questions come in at this point. Feel free to drop them in the Q&A box if you've got them. Here we go. What do you think are some of the most valued skills needed in the ecosystem right now? Nick, do you want to take your stab, and I can add some as well?
I will. First of all, from a non-technical standpoint, the most valuable skill is somebody who can confidently present and guide customers through their journey with Salesforce. I would say the weakness of a lot of people that have not done as well, or consulting companies that maybe aren't as good, or complaints that I hear from customers about maybe past people that they've worked with, is that they were not consultative enough. They were just waiting for orders so that they could go type on the keyboard and do what they were told. If you want to charge a great rate, you have to be consultative. You have to help your customers think through scenarios versus just do exactly what they're asking. It's the whole taxi driver versus tour guide analogy, right? You want to be the tour guide, not the taxi driver. And so that's number one. From a more tactical standpoint, the skills that we see the most demand for are really those niche skills around the acquisitions that Salesforce has done most recently around CPQ, MuleSoft, Tableau, communities, kind of those things that aren't as commonly known across most people in the Salesforce ecosystem. Sales and Service Cloud are certainly, I think, still majorly in demand broadly across the ecosystem, but definitely those niche skills are the ones that are harder to find, and that's where folks can charge a little bit more on their hourly rate if they have good experience in those areas.
Perfect.
Great question.
Another question, have you seen any change in contract flow for independents?
Any change in contract flow for independents? I would say I've seen a lot more people becoming independent, if that's maybe the question, or have I seen companies slow down on hiring contractors? That I've not seen either, at least not to date. But we have certainly seen a surge in independent consultants over the past few years, especially from folks who have come from other consulting companies and maybe were traveling a lot, or maybe had a change in their own personal situation and needed to be able to work from home more and remotely more, or just didn't want to work as much, frankly. Maybe they have another income, or maybe they have other reasons for being financially independent and only want to work a certain amount. And so, thankfully, again, in this ecosystem, we can do what we do from pretty much anywhere, from a browser and a computer. So it's afforded a lot of people to take a good look at what do they really need, what's going to be fulfilling to them, and jump off on this journey. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, John, feel free to unmute and ask a follow-up if you've got it. I don't see any other questions. If you got them, feel free to drop them in the Q&A or raise your hand and we can unmute you. Here we go. We got a question. If I'm just getting started as an independent, can 10K help me find clients or build my business?
That's a great question. And that's exactly what we do, right? So we work with independents in two different ways, really. One is if you have a unique skill set and something unique to offer to our clients, then absolutely we can help connect you with clients that will have work that is interesting to you. The other way is a lot of independents may actually have their own customers where they can't actually fulfill all the requirements that that customer has. Say maybe they're more of a declarative expert and they need code assistance, then we can actually help provide development services to their customers through them as well. So we have lots of independents who will do one or the other, or even both with us. So certainly I would say that the biggest thing there is kind of what I mentioned a minute ago, is having that unique skill set to offer, right? That's what a lot of our clients are looking for. That's really where we kind of specialize in how we go to market with our customers, is around those specialized skill sets and the roles that are the hardest to find. So those might be technical in nature. They might be the niche skills. They might be more of a kind of advisory type of role for a specific industry, for example. So those are the majority of the folks in our community.
Great. I think that's all the questions. Any other questions out there? Perfect. Well, we appreciate you all hanging on with us through the end here. You can obviously see our contact information on the slide. Feel free to reach out either at the 10K direct information or at Nick or mine directly. So we'd love to chat.
Thanks very much for joining, everybody. Thanks for the great questions, and have a great day.
Awesome. Take care, guys.
Yeah.